I just think it's such an awesome program that you guys are putting together, and I think it's going to have a big impact. I know a lot of our parents, we do parent training, and they'll talk about, issues they might have in the community, and they talk about this happened at church and this was really hard, so it is something that can be difficult, yeah. Yeah.
All right, so we do, I don't know, you guys are probably pretty familiar now, I would think, with ABA and kind of what it is, reinforcement, what we teach, language skills, tolerating skills, decrease in challenging behavior, all those things. So today we're going to go through just a little bit of the symptoms, some things you might see with kids specifically that have an autism diagnosis, and then pairing, which is one of the things we do initially when we try to start relationships with our kids. Basically just makes them want to be friends with us and want to be around us. And we'll show you some videos of kind of how our therapists do that. So.
We are going to talk about some symptoms. I know you guys are probably pretty familiar with this, so we might fly through it. Social deficits are a symptom. So basic social interaction, that can be really difficult for children with autism. Some people say they kind of prefer to live in their own world, do their own thing. They might appear to be disinterested or unaware of what other people are doing or what's going on around them. They may not seek out to connect with others or to try to make friends. They may not do that on their own. Some do, some may not. Sometimes they may not play pretend kind of games, want to engage in group activities. They might not imitate others. They might not use toys appropriately or use them creatively. They might have trouble understanding or talking about their feelings. They may not seem to hear when others talk to them. You might come over and say oh, hey, so-and-so. They might not respond. And they may not share their interests or achievements with others. Obviously, all people with special needs are very different, so it just depends on the person, but these are some common things.
Mm-hmm. And then you will likely see some speech deficits, so you might see abnormal tone of voice, just odd rhythm, and they just speak a little differently. It repeats the same words and phrases over and over again. This is called echolalia. A lot of times, if they've watched a video or something like that, you may hear them repeating the sounds over and over again after. They respond to a question by repeating it rather than answering it. This is really common, so you might be like, do you want to go play? And they'll say, do you want to go play? They don't actually respond with what you're looking for. That kind of goes back to that social deficit that Kara was talking about. They'll refer to themselves in third person sometimes. So if it's the little girl named Katie, she might say, Katie wants to go play. So she doesn't necessarily communicate in that way. Lots of difficulty communicating needs or desires. This is generally the most big deficit for kids that have an autism diagnosis. So learning how they communicate. We talk later about things to maybe talk to the parents about beforehand so that you know, because some kids use a picture exchange. Some kids will just push your hand towards what they want. But knowing how they communicate is probably your number one priority. They don't understand simple directions, statements, or questions. Following instructions can be really, really difficult. And so again, talk to the parents beforehand so that you have an idea of kind of how you get them to follow the instructions. And they do take things pretty literally, so be careful with humor, irony, or sarcasm.
So you might see some individuals that are nonverbal. Or no, this is more talking about them using their nonverbal behavior, so they can communicate in other nonverbal ways. So they might have trouble picking up on nonverbal cues and using body language. They might not respond to gestures that you use, or they might not understand if they go to approach another group of kids that maybe they are that maybe they might not understand the body language that people are using. So this makes that give and take of a social interaction really difficult because they may not pick up on those things. Sometimes they might avoid eye contact. They might use facial expressions that don't match what they're saying. They may not pick up on other people's facial expressions if they're not using the eye contact. Sometimes they're not looking at you at all, so they might not pick up on your facial expressions, the tone of voice you use, any gestures you use. They may not use gestures a lot themselves. They might have some sensory issues, like they might not like certain sights, smells, loud noises, things like that might be going on. And they could also have abnormal posture, clumsiness, eccentric ways of moving. Maybe they like to run a lot, maybe they walk on their tiptoes, things like that. So those are all things that you could see as well.
This is related to inflexibility, so a lot of the kids we work with have a rigid routine. We usually have to teach them how to handle a broken routine. They just prefer to have everything routine every day, and it can be hard to break sometimes. Have difficulty adapting to any changes in the schedule, so just know if, in the classroom, if you have a schedule, that it could be a challenge for some of the kids if things get switched around. So just keep that in mind. They do have unusual attachments to random objects like light switches, rubber bands. Some like to just carry the same thing with them all the time. They also may have a preoccupation with a narrow topic. It's usually something that's very interesting to them, so reciting facts about maps, train schedules. They will, if they have conversational skills, a lot of times that's what they will talk about the whole time. So don't expect that back and forth conversation. They generally, until they're taught to, kind of stick with what they're talking about. Spends long periods of time rearranging toys in specific ways. A lot of them like to line up toys, or they'll get really close to like the wheel on a car or something like that. And then they repeats the same actions or movements over and over again. This we're going to go into a little bit later, but these are self-stimulatory behaviors. The hand flapping, some will rock, kind of like mess with their fingers. You'll see some of that here and there also.
And this just lists some more self-stimulatory behaviors. That could be a lot of different things. But yeah, you might see some of that. You could also see challenging behavior. I know you guys have talked with some other trainers about that, so we just have examples of what that might look like. If there's something, that they don't want to do, or they want to get back to mom and dad, maybe, you could see these things. Aggression, so that could be, kicking, hitting at you, pulling someone else's hair. Some individuals might engage in self-injurious behavior, so they might pull their own hair, they might bite themselves. That's something that we do see. Property destruction, maybe throwing things, knocking things over. And then profanity, we didn't give any examples for those, didn't think that was needed.
And one thing to keep in mind too, since they'll have peers around, if they have a history of aggressing towards peers, I know they talked to you about positioning, but making sure that if they're upset, to position between them and their other peers, because they will go for other peers. Okay, so what we really want to talk about today is, we think it's super important, is pairing, which sounds like you guys have had a little bit of experience with already. Little. So pairing is basically establishing a relationship with your buddy. So one of the first things we do as providers, for us, we pair ourselves with the things we love. We call this a little bit of the honeymoon phase before we go into actually instruction, and the reason is because we want them to want to be with us. We don't want to go in and jump into instruction and then they're like, go away, we want nothing to do with you right now. So as far as motivators go, keep in mind that not all kids like the same thing. When they get here, you might want to let them wander, kind of find what they are interested in. Again, talk to the parents. They probably have a pretty solid idea what they like to do. Kids with autism have difficult play skills. We talked about that earlier. They might be motivated by things that you would not expect them to be, like a shoestring or, like I said, a rubber band, something that they tend to walk around with. And like I said, this will help you to be near, they'll want to be with you and establish a positive relationship so that continues as you grow with your buddy.
Yeah, and we always try to look for ways that we can be a part of the activity. So like, okay, they're really into this. What can I do to add value to this so that I can be a part of it too? So sometimes we have to get a little creative with that, and it can be hard, but they might be happy to do something on their own, so we're always looking for ways like, okay, they're really into these cars right now, what can I do to make this better so that they'll want me to be a part of it with them? We kind of have it broken down into early learners or late learners. So obviously they'll all be interested in lots of different things, but some common things that they might like would be physical play, like getting tickles, if they're little, getting picked up, playing chase, things like that. Blowing bubbles, listening to music, snacks. Maybe mom and dad is like, hey, I've got this in here that you can give them, fruit snacks or something. Different sensory items like squishy kind of things like that. Looking at books, maybe watching movies, watching things on the iPad, and water play are typically things that like the little smaller kiddos like.
So we're just going to go through, we have 5 different clients of varying abilities, and we'll kind of give you the background, show you how we paired with them, and then hopefully that gives you some ideas of how you compare. This first one, I feel like we should not have put as the first one. She's going to be spinning the kid all over the place. Don't think that's what you have to do. I was like, we're going to lose all listeners after the first video. So this little guy is 2 years old. He has very small array of words. I think he said like 4 or 5 words. He uses a picture exchange, really small picture exchange, to communicate. A lot of self-stimulatory behavior. He spins while he looks at things. I don't know if he has any toys that he plays appropriately, really.
He'll maybe look at books. There's maybe a few.
Just a few.
Yeah.
He does have some challenging behavior, crying, elopement, self-injurious behavior, and aggression. Little ability to follow instructions, including safety ones. That's a big thing to keep in mind is most of the kids that have autism don't follow safety instructions, so like stop, come here, all those things. You might have to position yourself in front of doors or anything that might become a safety concern. And this little guy likes videos, he likes physical play, he likes bubbles, he likes spinning, he likes books, so kind of goes into all of those things that we said are common.
So real quick, just to, so some of the principles that you're talking about with pairing,
Yeah.
I know you're actually specifically talking about children with autism or teenagers or individuals with autism, but are some of these techniques also transferable to like ADHD? Because some of the behaviors are different, but I mean, or are like Down syndrome or like other scenarios.
Yeah,
So I mean,
absolutely.
I guess I'm asking the question to make sure that if the answer is yes, that we are also thinking, oh, they're just talking about autism. My kiddo's not going to have autism.
good
He's got
point.
Down syndrome, so I'm just checking out here. So I'm really asking for real. I'm also saying, hey,
Keep that in mind. Yeah.
so
No, absolutely.
Is that
It can
true?
be used with.
I mean, I pair with my neighbor's daughter all the time, and she's neurodivergent, so it's like you can
the
pair
techniques are the
with
same.
anybody. It
Okay.
doesn't matter ability level or anything like that. But yes, the techniques are the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably won't play because it's So don't panic.
You don't have to do that.
You don't have to do that. But that is for the littler guys. They do kind of like to be, played with physically. And this is great because, like Kara was saying, she has to be involved in this activity. He can't do that by himself. So that makes her even cooler because she now he has to go to her for
So
that.
he will seek his therapist out because he's like, well, I could do this, but with them, I can do all these cool things. So the next client that we're looking at is 3.5 years old. He is nonverbal. He uses a small picture exchange. Are you guys familiar with a picture exchange?
A Pixboard.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
just kind of learned about it.
Cool.
in our
Yes.
For the sake of our video listeners, though, give us a quick description of what that
Yeah,
is.
so some of them might have, it might be a book or it might be a board that has pictures on it where they might pull the picture off or point to a picture to show you what they want. So that's how he communicates. He has a couple of items that he can ask for using his picture exchange. He does engage in challenging behavior in the form of aggression and crying. he also has a lot of self-stimulatory behavior. He has specific toys that he likes to carry around with and look at in certain ways. A preoccupation with items that are kind of not typical. Not a lot of ability to follow instructions, including safety ones also. And he also likes the physical play, sensory toys. He just likes being cuddled. He loves sitting on his therapist's lap, and they'll sit on, we have these big exercise balls, and he'll sit on their lap and bounce with them, and he really enjoys that. So this also, you don't have to do this, but this video, they're doing a lot of physical
Again, don't panic. Tickles though tend to be,
Yeah.
you can't go wrong with tickles.
Yeah, and
most
that
of
would
the
be a good
time,
one, you
so.
know. Obviously, if you're trying to join in with the class, you're probably not going to be wanting to spin people around and be really distracting, but you could give little tickles or things like that that they might like.
So these are some of our later learners. So these are going to be the more advanced, more vocal, kind of preschool readiness type of kids. They still like physical play. Kids just love physical play in general. They like movies and iPads. They're starting to engage in that pretend play where they like to get their Barbies out and pretend they're, playing and superheroes, which don't even ask me to tell you a superhero. I have no idea. Games, they like to play hide and go seek. Board games, red light, green light has been a huge one at the center lately. They like books. They like to build with, blocks. They make train tracks. And then they do have conversations about some preferred topics. Like I said, sometimes it's usually just their preferred topic, but yeah. So this little guy's 5. He is vocal. Actually, I think it's a girl. 5, vocal. She can request what she needs, label, she has conversations. Sometimes she's a little hard to understand, so we kind of have to figure out what she's trying to say. Some preoccupation with certain kinds of toys. She really likes like girly toys. So we have a hard time getting her to go out of that, but she's a little girl, so. She will follow variety instructions when she wants to, and then challenging behavior in the form of she'll protest sometimes when she doesn't want to do something. She really likes princesses, pretend kitchens, pretend dollhouses, piggyback rides, and doing people's hair. So.
Oh, it's loading. Does anyone have any questions so far, or yeah?
The honeymoon phase that you mentioned earlier, I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
The, therapists will take a honeymoon phase with an individual. So a BCBA might get with an individual 3 to 4 times a week or more and spend many hours with them potentially. Here in this setting, we might get them at the most twice a week,
Okay.
maybe, at the most 2 hours out of the week.
Yeah.
What does a honeymoon phase look like for that kind of time frame?
From what I'm gathering, it's hard to tell because I don't know what kind of activities you have planned, but I think a lot of it is probably going to be pairing, JC, if I'm correct. Like, I don't know what the activities are going to be that they're expected to be involved in, or if, I guess I don't know the structure that well.
So, primarily if we're talking about like K-5, they have their own full church service in there. So they
Okay.
have their own worship, they have their own games, they have their own
Okay.
announcements. And it is a large group setting for the majority of the time. And towards the end of service, they will break out into smaller group settings in different classrooms for more of a sit around the table, let's maybe work on a craft or
Gotcha.
have maybe another lesson.
Yeah.
So ideally, we're just wanting them to be a part,
Yeah.
large group
Yeah.
setting.
And I feel like we talk about a honeymoon phase, but we are pairing all the time.
Mhm.
So, you guys probably aren't going to you're going to jump into things, but you can be thinking, all right, how can I be a part of what they're doing? That way, they're gonna be more likely to listen to me when I ask them to come over, because if they know that I am fun and I give them, you know, cool things that they like, then they're gonna be like, all right, I'll come do this with you, because I know that you know, you have some snacks that I like, or you are gonna give me tickles, or you might talk to me about this. So it is something we spend a lot of time with at first, but if you guys aren't able to do that, you could just be thinking of like how you can do it throughout, and you know, maybe a situation comes up that doesn't go well, so like, all right, how can I get back on the right track and still work to build that relationships to make things go better.
So from what I recall, in one of our earlier trainings, we are going to be careful not to give commands and direct instructions while we're trying to gain their trust. And I hear you guys saying the same thing, except you're saying play, really do what attracts them, like what draws them to even want to be with you, and then just kind of jump into that. And I imagine, to answer your question, Chris, I imagine depending upon the level of ability of the individual and the demand on the need for a buddy, that might really drive how long that honeymoon season would take. So I don't know, I don't know if that's an easy, if you were asking that question before too, and I think it's going to depend on each individual kid.
For sure.
Chris, you might be able to speak to this as well, because you work with kids. Well, actually, several of you could answer this question, but do you think that, I think that that's maybe where landing, and then depending upon your individual and their needs, and if they're like defiant, well then it's probably going to take you a lot longer to get, you know, like ODD is going to be like, whoo, okay, so now we're just talking safety and anything we can get for success as we're building.
It's definitely an individual case by case thing, but like Kara said, if they're going to do a craft or something and they like bouncing on the ball, you know, maybe they can bounce on the ball while they do their craft, or if they like tickles, you can, you know, periodically give tickles while they're doing the activity or whatever it is. So just making what they like to do part of that activity.
I really like it, Chris, that you're thinking that way, because it's, you know, that is an important, that really is an important piece of what we're doing, is building relationship, which is, by the way, why, let me just reinforce why we're looking at weekly commitments for 3 months at a time, or 6 months at a time, 9 months, or 12 months at a time. So every week with these individuals for 3 months at a time, and then you can take a break for 3 months if you want, and then come back or whatever. Or some of you had said, I just want to work all the time, and I'm fine with that. We just want you to know that you have flexibility. But so every week is going to help with that, Chris, instead of like bouncing once a month. Well, good luck. It's going to be till Jesus comes that we can care with that child, so, or that teenager. So.
I think too, we talk about building instructional control, so kind of starting small and building up to it. So if you are with someone who's maybe really defiant, doesn't want to go do something, thinking of how you can break it down and start with something small. Okay, they're listening to me while I do this, let's go a step further, and still appreciate those small successes and be like, we'll get there. I think this video,
It's delicious. Yucky? I don't know. This looks good. What's yucky? You don't like broccoli. You think broccoli is yucky? Yeah, you can. I think beans are yucky. Do a little salad. We need bubbles. Oh no. Let's go find some.
So like in that scenario, she liked bubbles, so she could take the bubbles to the activity with her, you know what I mean, while she's engaging with them. So just taking what she likes, being able to go do an activity with that, so it's not instructional, you know what I mean, so.
and there she really likes, I don't know why it's stuck on. She really likes talking about certain things, like she thinks it's funny to talk about food that's yucky and stuff that you don't like, and just having conversations about those things.
This next client is he's 5 years old, he's got language, he's very interested in viewers, but he's kind of awkward with it. He will follow variety of instructions, again, when he wants to. Challenging behavior in the form of aggression and elopement. He actually has aggression towards peers, so these are the kiddos that you're going to want to look out for and make sure that I think you guys learned about positioning last week, is that correct? So just making sure to be within, between them. He likes peer interactions, he likes pretend play, he likes games, red light, green light, physical play, he'll take you, you know, throwing him around all day, but that's the majority of our kids, so. Still loading.
I don't know if this one's gonna work. Maybe not. Do you guys have any ideas of like age ranges and things for who you'll be working with?
Chris, can you address that?
I believe we, in early childhood, it's 3 years old. 3 years old.
Okay.
To all the way to kids rap. So
Well-
it'd be 5th grade, whatever 5th grade would be.
Well, we talked about through Tribe, like,
So
if we get permission to be in Tribe.
Through you.
But
there'll
that's
be
our goal.
some
I'm already in there,
adolescents
so-
as well.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm sorry, which then is up through 9th grade.
Okay. Very good.
Wait, did I just say 9th grade?
Yeah, 12th
Well,
grade.
12th grade.
Okay.
I don't know what I was thinking.
Through middle school.
Middle school, yeah, that still doesn't work because 9th grade is high school.
Well,
It's just maybe slow Wi-Fi, maybe.
Might be. I don't know.
Sarah, they went off the internet or DVD?
It's all on the Jeopardy thing. Doo-doo-doo.
Let's see if she can get it working with it.
I know, right? The pressure's on.
Do, that didn't work.
He's misbehaving now.
How do you do something?
Blocking.
Chris, while we're waiting, can you tell us, just even up to this point, while we're waiting, and then we'll just stop when we get here, individuals that are that have said yes to be a part of the program, can you give us some?
About how many?
Well, no, not just how many, but like, what would be, kids with autism or kids with physical disabilities, teenagers with, or adults with?
It's mostly autism.
Okay.
There's some ADHD, some sensory processing things. I don't remember seeing any ODD, but mostly autism. Yeah.
Okay. Now, are they primarily younger? I know.
Yes.
I am asking you to pull this right off the top of your head, because she's the one who's pulling with Jennifer there. Well, Jennifer's helping us with the processes behind the scene. Chris is helping us with calls and such. But so the age span, are there any adults in the program yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. I think we're hitting right at kids rap, and then you guys have a tribe person.
Okay.
So it's like maybe one person
Okay.
in tribe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. It's just on my desktop, so thank you.
Oh, okay.
Way to be on the fly, girl.
I do have a question. If you start a child young and you're working with, working through some of the behaviors and things, do you find those behaviors diminishing as they get older, or, okay?
Yeah, I mean, that's always our main goal. If we see that, there has been an increase in the amount of challenging behavior they're engaging in, or it's not decreasing, we're always looking like, what changes can we make, what can we do? Because we want to make sure that challenging behavior is, and we have a lot of success with that and see that with a lot of our kids.
Yeah, that's our goal. It's usually language related, so I would say 75%
Yeah, if they're
just not
upset.
being able to.
Yeah, like what could they do? I see they're getting upset right now, so what could they do instead of doing that? Is it because, I know you guys talked about functions, so do they not want to do this activity? Is there something over there that they really want, trying to figure out what that is, and then showing them how they can communicate that with us instead of getting upset?
So you guys are working with individuals on a regular basis, and we'll be working with them on a regular basis in a more intermittent kind of environment. So I'm thinking our goals for those behaviors that are unwanted, wow, how much progress are we going to actually make in the time that we're in? Coach us real fast, and then you can decide to just move on or watch your video, whatever you like to do. Coach us on what would be appropriate steps on our part for unwanted behavior that maybe the parents or caregivers are reinforcing, or what if they're not trying to change certain behaviors because they're picking their battles? What would you suggest for us to do with that in-house?
Yeah, so talking to the parents, which you just mentioned, if they have any strategies for when those things happen. The other thing Kara and I talked a lot about too is, and we'll get into it a little bit later, is redirecting to other things. So if it's something like we can't go see mom and dad right now, let's try to find something else to get their mind off of it.
I feel like sometimes too suggesting it doesn't help. Like you're like, hey, we could do this or this, and they're like, no. But if you start engaging in it, they might be like, oh, that looks kind of fun. So you might be like, all right, yeah, I know it stinks we can't go get mom and dad, but you get something fun out and start playing with that. If they're not interested, just try something else. It might take a couple tries, but yeah, redirecting, trying to find, and just keeping that in mind as you work with them, like, okay, they really like this, so maybe I can use that next time.
Yeah, and just being patient. It's hard. Like when we have kids 40 hours a week, I mean, it takes a few days before we kind of start building that.
Yeah, and I know you guys don't necessarily have that, but yeah, just trying to make it fun and making them.
Yeah, so redirection's a big one. And then we'll talk later, we have a few tips on like if it does happen, some really quick strategies you could do in the moment, like stepping away, you know, that type of stuff. So we'll do that. Hopefully this video works now. Kara and I are not tech people, as you can
Whoa, that's a spaceship that's out of control! They have arrived. Oh no. It's really not bad. Animals are gonna come out.
This is still pairing, right? This is still pairing techniques.
Oh, we took it right. I only have one eye! I only have something! I only have one eye! Oh no! It's an elephant!
Yeah, so you can see he's interested in random stuff that she's just taking and making fun, and he's getting a kick out of it. So again, they're building that relationship of like, oh, when I'm with you, I actually have fun, and so I want to come back and be with you regularly. And then I think we have one last one. So this girl is 9. She is vocal. She can have conversations. She's not interested in her peers particularly. Will follow a variety of instructions, once again, when she wants to. Challenging behavior in the form of self-injury, aggression, crying, so she does have quite a bit of challenging behavior. She likes books, videos, some games, loves drawing, and she will do some pretend play. So I'm just going to go back here because I don't think that's going to care. And this one's good because she likes reading, so she's a fairly
Ooh la la, this is going to be grand. Max has made lots of soups before. Fish soup, curry, pickle lemon, red hot chili soup, squash gumbo, cracker barrel cheese, and marshmallow soup, and way too many beans soup. Okay, look at his face. Do you think the soup is sweet or spicy? Yeah! It's spicy! He had cooked them all, but every recipe had been created by another chef, not Max. Now he was making his own soup. The soup that he, Maxwell Duff, would be remembered for inventing. Slurp, slurp, sit. That smells perfect, but the taste is not quite right. Missing an ingredient. Max thought it over. Pinch broccoli, zucchini, chives. That's it! He's got an idea. What do you think he's gonna add to his soup? You think that? Okay, let's see.
So even like just a book or something, just make it really fun for them to be able to, and he or she could answer some questions and do some things, and that's fun for her. So you're just gonna get a very wide a range of types of learners. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea of little guys to the more advanced kids and kind of what you can see and how you compare with all of them. Okay. All right, so
Yes, so we talked a little bit about getting lots of information from the caregiver. They're going to be able to tell you, you know, hey, watch out for this. These are things they really do not like. So if you know that's coming up, you might want to, you know, bring them to the sensory room during that time. They can fill you in on what happens when they get upset, what that looks like, the things that they really do like. So they might have helpful, like, hey, they really like doing this, so try that with them. They might have strategies like, hey, this really works well at home, and you can find out, like, you know, just basic information about them, if they're able to follow instructions, what kind of things they can do. We also find that visuals can be really helpful. For some kids, and for some kids they're not. Some maybe like a timer to show how long. Okay, we're in this activity right now. Here, I'll get my timer up, and so you can see it counting down until when we'll move on to the next thing. Sometimes we have a little schedule with just simple pictures to show them, like, all right, first we're gonna sing, you know, then we're gonna do the whatever you guys have going on, and then you can take it off to show them, like, all right, we're done with this one, so this is how many we have left until we're all done. Those can be really helpful. Also using gestures, sometimes if you're giving them instructions, you're like, hey, let's go over here, it might be helpful to maybe minimize the kind of, like you said, like the verbal instructions you're giving, and just kind of point like, oh look, we gotta go over here. That can be helpful.
And then hopefully this helps with the challenging behavior. So we do some just basic strategies. So when they do get upset, back up, unless they're having self-injurious behavior. But a lot of times if they're crying, just kind of stepping back. One of the biggest things is for you guys to stay calm, because if you're wrapped up and that doesn't help, it helps to have like a very calm demeanor when kids are having challenging behavior. Just stay quiet, use a calm voice. A lot of times you just kind of have to wait, and once they've calmed down, you know, you can give praise. I like how you're calm. Let's go try and do some, you know, whatever else it is.
This talks about quietly reassuring. I feel like it's helpful to acknowledge, like, hey, I know that you really want to go, you know, see mom and dad, whatever it is. I get it. You're gonna get to whenever so and so. But giving that reassurance, like, hey, I
So
get
it's okay
it.
to do that rather than try to just. Because I would think if you would bring that up again, that
right. If you see they're going away from it, I feel like it just depends on the kid. Sometimes it's helpful to acknowledge, like, hey, I get it. This is really hard, but you're right. There are other times where they're gonna be like, I was just forgetting about mom and dad, and now you reminded me.
Unfortunately, there's no blanket strategy for some kids. So yeah, if you see like every single time I mention that, they're just, you know,
don't do that
losing
again.
it, then I'm gonna stop doing that and
Yeah.
kind of think about it again. And then use simple language, no threats, no discussion of consequences, no apologies. Once they're calm, you can just be like, all right, let's go. You know, you don't have to necessarily make a big discussion about it. I'm sure you guys have thought through this already, but having a quiet area where they can go if they start getting overwhelmed. You know, it's like a big
It's like that will
group.
maybe be kind of here, like in this.
And then we talked about redirection, but sometimes just redirecting them to other activities can take their mind off of it. And like Kara said, you might not be able to physically take them somewhere, but if you're able to, you know, bring them bubbles or bring them whatever it is that they're like, okay, this is fun, let me go. Do that instead. All right, that's our
So
spiel.
like self-injurious behavior, somebody's in kids rap and they're starting to hit their head because it's too loud.
Mhm.
You're gonna want to go in and block. I mean, I feel like there's some smaller kids that, and they might do something that looks similar to that, but they're really not gonna hurt themselves. So it'll really be using your best judgment, like, is this, you know, are they just kind of engaging in self-stimulatory behavior? Are they really upset and they, you know, wanna do that? You could go in and block. If you see, you can model like the language for them if they're not able to give you that language, like, hey, this is too loud, and then try to maybe guide them somewhere else.
Yeah, you'll definitely have to block. Again, stay calm. It's not something to panic about. Block, and then, you know, if they need to leave the activity, that's okay, you know what I mean? If they need to come in and stay quiet, and once they're calm, they can go back in. But yeah, blocking is probably the biggest thing, and then kind of figuring out the function, which you guys have all learned about function, so, yeah. Any other questions? You guys are a quiet group.
I know, we tried to come up with some strategies, but we're like, we don't necessarily, you know, you guys are,
blanket.
yeah, and you guys have done a lot of training, so like, what do you guys feel like are maybe gonna be some of the biggest challenges, or?
Yeah, so, I teach 3-year-olds here at
Okay.
Cornerstone on the other side. So I'm aware of redirecting and.
Yeah.
But as a dead last resort, if they're being completely like, and this is more like a, neurotypical child
Yeah.
question too, not just autistic children, but, or children with autism, but, if it's completely not working and people are getting injured, what's an acceptable way to keep them away, because I missed last week's, without them hurting other kids, because in my classroom, if I call the coach and I kind of wrap that little 3-year-old up and I kind of lay them on my lap on the floor and let them kick and hit, so they're not hitting me, kicking me, or don't have anybody around so they can't hurt anybody, is that acceptable to do as a dead last resort?
Yeah.
I think I would talk with the parents about that,
I
like,
know
hey,
some kids don't like to be touched at all.
Yeah.
They're not being touched.
I mean, I think talk with the parents and make sure they're like, hey, if, you know, if they're getting really upset, is it okay if I, you know, is it okay if I pick them up? A lot of our, like, really little kiddos are okay with us picking them up, things like that. You can also kind of, it can be tricky, but try to, like, guide with your hands and position your body so that you're in between them and the other kids, and then can start to guide them in the other direction. But I think check with the parents beforehand, be like, hey, are they gonna be okay if I do that, if things get...
Usually when I'm teaching, I have 16 kids, and it's my
Yeah.
assistant, so I have to have a coach come step in with
Yeah.
kids struggling, you know,
Yeah.
stay in ratio.
Yeah.
So if they're attacking other children, I kind of like gently, and I rub their back, and I keep telling them, say, you're loved, it's okay,
Right.
you know, until they're
Right.
like removed. You know, 'cause I
Yeah.
don't know if that would be okay. Because I'd be crossing sometimes the line.
I think,
So,
I think
The
that's
one thing,
okay.
you guys have probably already thought about this, but having some mats, like protective mats if you need it, so if you need to block from other kids, or if you need to block yourself, you know, if they're aggressing towards you, that would be a good thing to have on hand. We use mats quite a bit, those
Yeah.
are blue gymnastics
Yeah.
mats.
The second week we put out mats. They might need to invest in some mats, but I think those mats are extremely heavy and awkward and hard to.
We have one at home.
So we might need to get some like panels of mats. You know how you have those little Velcro?
Yeah,
that's
that's
a
good.
good
Not
idea.
those yoga,
Oh.
Yeah, I think that's what we
lightweight,
have.
can be easily carried
Yeah.
around.
Oh, yeah, sure, because they're kind of foamy,
Right.
right, and you roll them up, but you can,
Right.
I'm thinking like wrestling match and
Yeah.
lighter bad boys are heavy, so. Okay, so I was thinking, for some reality, those who have children with any sort of diagnosis or disability, or in this room, or those of us who've had experience, why don't you throw out some actual real scenarios that you are more than likely going to have displayed. So that way we can actually work through some real life stuff.
Did you have a question?
Well,
too?
actually, I wanted to see if.
And then Jody, you can start then.
I actually wanted to see if this would be a good synopsis. So when you are set up with a child as a buddy, or when you're working as an inclusion specialist, that's, you know, what we're doing. What you're looking for is a way to connect to that child.
Yeah.
You want that child to feel like you are their special friend.
Yes.
And then in turn, I don't wanna sound mean, capitalizing on that special friendship
Yeah.
to encourage them to do things that are good for them or better for them
Yeah.
or better for everybody.
Right.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what pairing
Basically what we're
is.
sending home, yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And once you have that relationship established, they might be more likely to go do activities because you know how to present them and you can take those things with you, that make it fun for them and kind of blend it all together.
Okay, so let's talk about some real life church scenarios.
Okay, if they're having snack time with the younger ones and a kid has an allergy, my thing is, and they'll say, no, I don't have an allergy, or I want that. And they have this food in their hand and they're supposed to have the allergenic, non-allergenic, or whatever it is. What do you do if it's already in their hand? Are you allowed to grab their hand and say, no?
That's a safety
What do you
thing,
do?
so yes, at that
Okay.
point you kind of do what you gotta do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Usually when it comes to safety, if it's like a child bolting for a door or gonna, we've had kids that have had scissors before, they're gonna do, then all
You
goes
do
out the
what you
window.
can
You do what you
to
gotta
keep
do.
them and other people safe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so here's what we got. My name's Jeff, and I'm with the Safety and Security Ministry, and that's why I'm in here to.
Yeah.
That way I can hopefully train our guys.
Yeah.
And of course, obviously their mindset, is, security more than it is safety.
Yeah.
So that'll be something I'll retrain them to based on what's going on here. But I'm a worst case scenario guy, so,
That's
okay.
good.
So if you guys ever had discussions with other churches, or is this the first time you've had a church presentation?
Personally, I think this is the
Yeah, I
first.
think
Okay,
this is the
okay,
first-
so that just helps me with my questions.
Yeah.
So we've got, I'm just going to kind of use Kate just an example, Kate has walkers or has buddies, now they go through. Not one time we ever had a problem with Kate. However, say, get this new kid in and he wants to bolt to the sanctuary. Obviously you don't want to, chase him down, we're going to have to teach him blocking techniques. But, what happens to us, we have radios. So what we do is we'll talk, say, hey, we have, we have a kid, running down the hall screaming, and we just try to go to help contain, because we're here to assist, not to take over, obviously. So we're going to be in our assist mode, and I had mentioned to Rhonda about having all of our people come in and take a look through the window, see who they have, hopefully they can identify all the individuals. Plus, we need to teach them to, to go to the buddy, not to take over. We're there to assist. So that's going to be the biggest thing. I'm going to say the red shirts, to assist. But my thing is, if say he bolts out and then wants to, not Kate, but he just, bolting into the sanctuary. What's our best scenario if we can't get there? Because we don't necessarily have someone at every door,
Right, right.
the whole time.
That's a tough one, yeah. So if they bolt into the sanctuary,
It's not like they bolted outside or
yeah,
they're
outside.
kicking
Right.
and
No, no,
screaming
it's-
or,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
We're in the sanctuary. That's go ahead.
I do know that we'll have the inclusion champions. Well, they'll be responsible for a group, so maybe they can help. If that person is positioned in the sanctuary, maybe that person can
Sure.
come
Yeah.
and assist you quickly.
No, we'll
So you
assist
can-
them. No, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
That's the thing I want to drill into the guys.
Well, the
is-
inclusion
is we're gonna-
specialist would be already in the sanctuary
Okay.
monitoring.
Okay.
So that's different than the buddy.
Okay.
So if that person is available in the sanctuary, maybe that person could help.
Okay.
So we're talking about
Get a hold
teams
of
that are already in place.
Strategies from there, are you kind of like getting them to come out with you, like get them
Well,
to
with their buddy, or just
feel like
obviously we don't want to oversaturate. That's what
Right,
happens anytime
right.
there's a emergency. You get
Right.
5 guys going. Well, no,
Yeah,
we'll
right.
squelch that and say
Yeah.
really only one needs to go.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm just
I feel like sometimes just taking like the bait, like if they might have a hard time if you're like being really like giving a very demanding tone, like hey, we need to get out. Sometimes they might respond really well to that and be like, all right, I need to get out of here, and other times they might not. And if they aren't, maybe being like, all right, what's a step that I can get them closer to calming down and wanting to come with me? So like, you know, maybe trying to have a quiet conversation really quick. Hey man, there's a lot of people out of here. Can you take my hand? Or like, hey, you know, there's a lot going on. Can you give me a high five? Let's calm down. Like, give them a step in the right direction, doing something that you think they're likely to do, and then be like, hey, that was a really good job listening to me. All right, can you walk with me a couple steps? That might
That's what the
be
buddy's doing.
helpful.
I want our guys to,
Okay.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
just the eyes, not, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of on the antecedent end, are they in like a closed door room, or like how easy is it for them to run out of the facility?
Well, Kids Wrap is
Kids Wrap
pretty
has
clean.
closed doors,
Okay.
but of course, because of fire code, we can't block them or lock them.
Right.
Okay,
So,
yeah, but they're
I mean,
closed.
if a kid runs
yeah.
across the room and the buddy
Yeah.
isn't on their tail,
They're
Yeah.
on.
they have
Yeah.
knobs.
It's an open
pull the knob,
range.
and
And
We've had
There's
vultures
multiple
before.
doors.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
a door in the back, there's 2 doors
Right,
on the other
there are
side.
3 doors.
And in the early childhood, those doors, they're half doors. They don't lock. I did experience on Sunday having to block a kid in. He was getting ready to bolt for dad.
Yeah,
And I did experience having to do that. It was tough because the door didn't lock.
Yeah.
And he knew that the door didn't lock.
yeah.
And so he tried to push between me from the back.
Uh-huh.
And so it took 2 of us, one blocking the door, but another one kind of getting him
Yeah.
to come back the other
Yeah.
way.
You're talking about my everyday
So-
problem. I think you're right.
So
Those
in
half
this
doors are
situation,
fun.
in this theoretical situation,
Mhm.
if the buddy, we'll say that this is a new child and maybe they haven't spent that much time with them,
Mhm.
would it be better, say if the child's in the sanctuary, would it be better for the security to take his hand and lead him out and leave the buddy as the good guy?
Potentially.
I feel like whoever he's willing to take a hand to go out with, I would be
Yeah.
like, all right, let's do it. Like if he's not willing to do it with the buddy, but he's willing to do it with you, that's great, let's go.
Mhm.
Okay.
So can somebody give us another real life situation, a real life scenario? So, because I feel like we're still talking theoretical, and I really, I know we've got parents in here who actually have worked through stuff too. Yes, that happened, and I understand, so I'm not scolding you for asking that question, but I'm like, okay, so I know that there are other scenarios, so, okay.
Okay, so we're in a classroom and there is a child who's beginning to protest very loudly. Whatever it is, they don't want to do it. And they're beginning to get, you know, they're beginning that ramping up
Yeah.
process of, I don't want to sit down, I don't want to sit here.
Mhm.
What are your go-to?
Are they autistic? Is the child autistic?
I'm not sure that it matters. Because what if they're anxious? What if they're autistic? What if they're ODD?
Okay,
One way or another, they have decided,
okay.
I don't want to do this.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
Fair enough.
So, from a safety standpoint, the other kids need to go. If they can go like sit, you know, somewhere else on the floor to go do whatever they're doing. You want to get the other kids away right away. Step one. Move anything that can be thrown, including like a table. You can like push the table away. Just make sure there's no items in the vicinity, and then go back to. You don't want to have a conversation necessarily at that time. So if they're like, I don't want to do it, you'll be like, well, you have to, or you know, just maybe acknowledge it once. We have to go do this activity, and then if they keep screaming, you just stay calm. Every so often, you can kind of remind them that we have to go do that. Once they've calmed down completely, and sometimes you'll have to wait. You might have to wait. It might not be a quick like, okay, let me go do what I need to do. And then once they're calm, once they do join the group again, be aware of those peers. I would give it a minute, like continue to keep peers a little bit separated. Maybe he can be like 5 foot away from the group, or just kind of coming a little closer to the group while he calms down. But always know that even when a child becomes calm, the likelihood in that moment to become re-escalated is really high. It won't take a whole lot. So doing what you can to get him closer, and then as he calms down, that's probably going to be your best bet. Does that make sense? The biggest thing in that scenario is those other kids and all the objects around him. And one thing too, and I'm sure I don't even have to say this, but if a kid is, you know, acting like that, the other kids might have a lot of questions, like, why is he doing that, or whatever, and so kind of modeling for those other kids, you know, he's just a little upset right now, and trying to just redirect for that child's dignity, that the kids aren't like staring and doing all the things, because that doesn't help the situation.
Well, if we're working hard at inclusion, that won't be the first time our kids have experienced that together.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
So in a church this size, occasionally it does happen that a little guy, neurotypical children, they get away sometimes.
Yeah.
When I say get away, I'm not talking about kids that are bolting, I'm talking about services almost over and, wait a minute, where's Jimmy?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that kind of stuff. It's a big church, it happens.
Yeah.
And we have, our security, we have a protocol for when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
What should we do differently specifically with autism when that happens? Because we're probably, over time, we're probably gonna get more folks in here with autism.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can see a rise in little Jimmy with autism. He's not gonna respond when you go in the bathroom, hey Jimmy, you in here?
I see.
This is more of the before it happens, and we can try to troubleshoot after that. We do, our rule at the center is like a 2 to 3 foot rule, so you have to be within 2 to 3 feet of that child at all times. Have your eyes on them at all times so that you know, and I know it's hard when there's a group and everything like that, but that is super helpful of just being aware of what they are, what they might be getting into, what they might be going off to, and staying really close to them all the time if you're their buddy.
Mm-hmm.
As far as once it happens,
So they could be getting out anywhere in the church? Is that what you're
It
saying?
happened with Cade.
Okay.
He went missing.
Yeah.
And I think it was one of those things where I thought Brad had him, Brad thought I
Right,
had him,
yeah,
and then all of
yeah.
a
It
sudden,
happens.
I mean, we just had an immediate, everybody, all hands on deck.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cade is missing, we need people in the parking lot, we
Yeah.
need people.
Yep,
Yeah.
And he ended up going to a darkened classroom. So
Okay.
even as people were running through looking in,
They couldn't see him.
they couldn't
Yeah.
see him because
Right.
he didn't turn on the light when he went in.
Right.
And it wasn't a classroom that he normally goes in.
Mhm.
I mean, like I said, we like almost went into panic mode, and it was like, we need everybody that can start scouring, because, I mean, we didn't know if he went on any of the doors, he could have been out in any direction, in any
Yeah.
parking lot. I mean, so,
Don't feel bad, JC, my kid was
Oh,
autistic.
but I mean, you're just yelling, Katie, you're just yelling.
Yeah, she
but-
did answer, I will give you
Yeah.
that, she did answer, but yeah, she was all the way on the other side of the gym.
And I don't think
She was
she
only
even
4.
actually yet even responded. It was just Mindy Tucky actually went in, then started going in the act, rather than just looking through the windows, started going through every classroom and found him playing, just sitting down playing with a toy or something, so. I mean, I think that's just, it's safety, so you just try to get hard, yeah.
and I think that these questions are fantastic so that we can actually implement a lockdown. Like the word means missing child, no judgment, because literally, like,
No.
it happens,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
think it's great for us to just be like, Jeff, we're done, let's go.
Especially because we switch rooms and stuff with the kids, like we go from this classroom to the ballroom
Yeah.
to whatever.
Well, I would assume, unless it's an inclusion champion, because the inclusion champion is in a room of students, but if it's a buddy, then that transition shouldn't be as surprising. He's missing because I'm one-on-one, so we're being trained to stay right with them, we're being coached 2 feet, did you say 2 to 4 feet?
We do
Yeah.
2 to 3 feet.
2 to 3 feet,
but-
so then, I mean, what practical advice, that let's make sure that if we're a buddy, we are on this is why we're in this room, so.
I was thinking about, a lot of times, like in this church, okay, we'll have buddies for inclusion in other ministries. I'm thinking we're gonna attract more families, and so there's going to be more
I think
families
you're right.
in the sanctuary that's not necessarily using a buddy. And I raised 2 kids. I know that when you look that way, they're gone. And they don't have to be neurotypical to be gone. only thing I can think of that I was taught is, you know, if you lose sight of them, look for water, because autistic kids are just nuts about water. And I think once or twice I've gone to the bathroom and I found them. You know,
My son has a
anything,
fascination with that.
anything to do
Yeah,
with
yeah,
water.
thinking of like what they, like you said, a fascination, like what do they really like, and you said, you know, you guys checked where Caden was, and so it might not always work, but that's what I would go to first, like, all right, what were they really into, like, is there something they were wanted while I was with them that they might go to, checking for those.
So my,
What I'm worried about is a lot of times you can be 3 feet away from these kids and you're calling, they're not gonna answer you.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be the tough part.
oh, I know we're giving the parents a break and things, but, which is why we're doing this. How, like if a kid is really upset and going through these things, would it break the bonding if like the first few times you say, let's just get mom and dad, like how do we know when to and when not to? Like, cause unfortunately I've never been a parent, it would've been nice, but I love kids. But I also don't wanna go, well, you can't be with mom and dad.
Yeah,
If they really
that's
need
not
mom and dad, that's the person they need, you know?
You guys get this because
so-
you know about reinforcement. So, yeah, going to get mom and dad, you know, screaming leads to mom and dad coming, then it's gonna continue to do it. But I understand what you're saying as far as like, you don't want to tell a kid like you can't have mom and dad right now. Like, I think it kind of goes back to that redirecting process that Karen talked about, like trying to find some other stuff they can do to get them distracted. I think if it's like a really severe, very, very severe challenging behavior kid, maybe the safety team can help. You might just have to call in some reinforcers and see if you can get that to calm down. Basically what I'm saying is use every last effort before getting them.
I would think just like our nursery has a policy, well, I don't know if our nursery does, but the nursery at the place I came from, we had a policy after, 15 minutes in the nursery, for instance, we're good, like this is our expectation.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine an agreement between the parents and the caregiver parents and the buddy or the whatever they say, like this is when I'm drawing the line and you need to come get me because you and I know what's coming next because I've experienced this before. So maybe taking the lead from them might be individualizing, but I would agree that our policy is going to be at whatever means we can before we have to do that. But then I think that I would need to coordinate with the parents.
I think you're right, and kind of having that understanding with, what challenging behavior do you see, how long does it last, are you comfortable with us kind of trying to work it out, if it's, going past 20 minutes, do you want us to come get, just setting up that individual.
That's such a great question, because I think that that's going to be something we're going to need to figure out. So I don't know, Chris, if we even have that on the intake
We don't have
report.
that, and I was gonna say the same thing, that usually 10 to 15 minutes, a good hard cry for 10 minutes, and somebody needs to come get you.
Yeah.
Remember
So-
last week we talked about the escalation and the de-escalation?
Yes.
And then giving permission and respect to what's actually going on, and then being able to follow that rhythm too. Like I'm sure you guys would attest to that.
Yeah.
We even talked about it a little bit here.
And then if you do have to go get the parents trying to reevaluate for next week, like how can we approach it differently next week? Could we have something ready for them when they get here? Maybe let them, I don't know, have a video on or something that they like, just so that as soon as they get here, they're like ready to be. Does that make sense?
I have an experience from last week. My son's 14, he's got autism, he has autism. We were in youth group. He does fine through most of it, and he'll sit back and he'll watch, because they do the sermon first, then they do their huddles, and then they'll do worship last. Well, at the end, he starts his teasing, laughing, and they're in worship, and then he's also pacing while he's running into kids. How do you prevent something like that? I tried to keep him at the back, but he wants to be up with the rest of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Because everybody goes up front.
Right.
for a while.
But when he's up front, he's
Distracting, yeah.
distracting everybody.
Will he follow any instructions of like, if you're like trying to get him?
Well,
But in
he
that
keeps
moment-
looking at me. He knows that he's pushing buttons.
Right.
So it's,
But he wants to be with the other kids.
okay, that's what I was gonna ask. I didn't know like what the function was. Okay, so he wants.
He's
to-
high functioning.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. The
Oh.
function of like the pacing and all those things. It's hard.
I don't know too if beforehand, if you could set something up, we contract a lot too, like before, like if you have like something that happens and you're like, all right, this didn't go well, maybe next time I can, hey, if you do this activity, then when we're done, if you sit there the whole time with your group, then we could go to the sensory room. So giving them that reminder, making sure it's something that they actually
I try to
want.
let him get through it, like 10-15
Yeah.
minutes of worship.
Yeah.
I know he can't do as long, like,
Right.
sometimes they go half hour, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah.
I know his time limit,
Right.
his attention.
Right.
So after that, I'll let him come out and
Yeah.
pace in the hall.
Yeah.
So is he in charge of his inclusion level, or are you in charge of his inclusion level?
Well, right now, I stay back, I just make sure he stays with the group. And he looks at me and he knows when I'm getting mad and.
The look.
Yeah.
The mom look.
And then he'll stop and then he'll start up again.
Yeah, that's
Fidget boxes? A fidget box.
Or yeah, like something that you can hold.
Is it a
maybe?
sensory, is he just restless and a sensory need?
Well, he paces and he's starting to get like the song, so he'll sing. But he's like this and pacing, and when he does that, when he's up in the front with he's running into all the kids and.
Like he's purposely trying to bump into
No,
them?
he's
Or
just out in his
Okay.
own little world.
He's trying to participate, he wants
Okay.
to be doing what the group is doing, but with some of his, I don't wanna say necessarily some of his behaviors, but some of the things that'll take him out of it. He's there, but he's mostly there.
Right.
And then there is also some, if a parent's in there, there can be some teasing that will start up that he knows that we're letting him be up there with the group doing what the group is doing, but he'll try to
See how far he can
Yeah.
push it.
When you say teasing, are you talking about him messing with you? Or you?
He'll start
when you
his
say-
laughing really loud.
Like, is it
Yeah.
to you or is it teasing,
No, it's-
picking on it? I'm
he's-
trying to define what's teasing. Is
He does his laugh,
Okay.
and it's just out of the blue. And I say it's teasing, but
he's trying to get a rise out of her.
Okay, so yeah, so it's with you. So he's trying to get your attention.
yeah, but it happens mostly that happens in the gym when the high school and middle school are together. But it's the pacing, how much should I allow?
I mean,
I try to, okay, John, if you're gonna pace, do it in the back of the
Right.
room.
Yeah,
But
he
it's-
wants to be up.
Right, he wants to be with.
I wonder if you could get like
Try
a rug
buddy.
or something that you could put near the group, but like, you gotta stay on this rug.
Well, they have all the chairs around too, so it's like,
Yeah, just giving him some place to
Tape off in there
Yeah.
or something, like, hey, if you wanna kind of
Actually,
move around like that, you could stay.
It's a basketball court, isn't it? Aren't there basketball lines? Couldn't you say?
well, when the middle school and high school are together in the gym, I let him pace in the back half of the gym.
And that's where other people do.
Right.
Other people,
But in
even
the
there are
kids'
typicals who
wrap,
pace and pray in the
Right.
back.
Yeah.
So that
in
would
the
be
kids'
very.
wrap room though, it's in the small, that's where the
Small
middle
area.
school group is.
But if you talked to the inclusion person there, and we just acknowledged that he needs to be free to walk back and forth in the back, because that's what he needs to be included, I'm sure that we can.
So I
Well, that's
heard you
nice.
saying, partner with the inclusion champion in the youth ministry. I'm wondering if, in this scenario, he wants to be up front, but there needs to be some learned behaviors, boundaries. So if he wants to be up front, the reward of being up front is to adhere to these expectations, and if he doesn't adhere to those expectations, then you as consistent, I'm thinking of some things that we would do, thinking about some things we've learned already. So you're consistently setting up some reward system to go up front. And if you can't, then that means you're working within partnership with the inclusion champion to make space and room for him. But it sounds like we could do both then.
Well, you're talking about two different kinds of services. And in fact, we're talking about two different locations. One is
Oh, I
a
thought
middle
you were
school
talking about-
location, and one is when they're combined.
Let's just talk about one. I'm
One
thinking
at
of
a
the
time.
gym, when they're all in the gym and they're all in together and they're doing worship in the back and
Well,
pacing is not interfering.
No.
It's when he's up front, so then if
Right,
he
yeah.
wants to be up front, the reward of being up front is to be able to be up front.
Right.
So if and you say he's high functioning, so then what would we do to set up some boundaries for being able to successfully be up front? Because those would be some behaviors.
Yeah.
And what are the techniques of teaching a behavior that's wanted in that environment? Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I have a hard time understanding the two different. So in one group, he's in the gym, he can go in the back.
In the back. Over here, they're like, all the kids go up
It's
to the
tighter. It's a
front.
much smaller
It's a
room.
smaller room with all the
Okay.
chairs set
It's
up.
the middle school youth group. So on the occasion, we're combining them, and we have middle schoolers and high schoolers. That goes in the gym.
Okay.
But it's mostly in
When he's
the
in the
middle
small
school room.
Okay.
But still, can you
It's
walk
good.
us through setting up the rewards to be up front? What is some steps that we can put into place to build that? Limiting the unwanted behavior and rewarding the behavior we want. So what
I feel like
steps?
It is sometimes helpful to make it really clear, like, hey, I know you really like being up there with the whole group. So if you wanna be up there with the group, I'm gonna show you a certain area, maybe we can find a way to make it a visual for him. So he's like, all right, I gotta stay in right here, this is where I can pace. And then just making it really clear. If you stay in here, that's awesome, you're doing great, you can stay up there. If not, it might bother some of your friends, so we might have to come in the back. Giving choices, I feel like helps a lot
I give him
too.
warnings, and
Okay.
the third warning, he's totally out.
Yeah, if that works well
Just-
for him, I think that.
And there's been times where we said, you've lost mommy, because and he's a, uh-oh. So the next week, he was on his best behavior.
He knew.
He knew.
He's
Can
mine.
he read?
He's starting to.
Yeah, kind of like a visual, like Kara was saying. You can even, might have to reserve something maybe that's just for church, that's preferred, and then if he stays, within his space or however you want to do it, we can give like checks or tokens or whatever.
See, he does fine in the sanctuary on Sundays when we bring him.
Okay.
So
Got
It's just
Danny in
that.
the sanctuary.
Just that,
yeah.
Well, it's very predictable and consistent in the sanctuary.
Yeah.
Probably unpredictable
Mhm.
and inconsistent.
Yeah, and
in
see,
the
in
environment.
the middle school, they do huddles first, and then they get to play games, and then they go into worship. So it's like, he's gotten all worked up, and then he goes into worship.
So then a transition,
Right.
step.
Yeah, he has a hard
Yeah,
time with
help him
transition.
Success to, or transition to this.
Yeah, I don't know if you could take like a rest time in between, just to like
Mhm.
calm and then
Go for a
in.
walk.
Yeah, go for a walk, that's a good idea.
Drink breaks.
Yeah.
Let's go for a drink
See if that helps kind of rub them down. Yeah.
Mhm.
But this also goes to show you, mom and dad know best. So that's why we gotta talk to mom and dad.
Okay, I have a short one.
Sure.
And then this is the last one, because it's 8:30.
Ways to figure out how to connect with a nonverbal child.
It's pretty similar.
I feel like just watching them can help and seeing what they're into and then finding a way that you can be a part of it. Sometimes you have to get really creative, but just, okay, they're really into this. What can I do to be a part of it? But yeah, just following their motivation, what are they looking at? What are they going to? I think is the biggest thing, just kind of seeing what they're into and making yourself be fun and be
Those are
part of
definitely
that.
the most difficult
Yeah.
kids, because
Yeah.
you wanna be like, we could do, you know, give them choices and do all these things, and it's not gonna fly,
Yeah.
so.
But don't give,
Let
like,
them explore.
just going in and being like, I'm not gonna give up, this didn't work last time, I tried 10 different things and that didn't work, but I'm gonna try to find 10 different things today and just keep trying.
Yeah, and don't get offended when it fails.
Yeah.
We fail like 100 times a day at this kind of stuff, so it's okay.
Yeah.
I got one more short one.
Okay.
So, like, when it comes to safety issues, trying to use aversion for, especially, you know, wall outlets or something. My kid in particular, you know, the best thing to do was always be as cartoony and as ridiculous as possible, and that would always, 90% would avert him. Would you say that's universal with autism? Like, is that, could we blanketly use that to?
Being goofy, being silly.
Well, I don't want to show you in here.
Chris, why not?
Well, for 14 years, I've learned to be as cartoony and as SpongeBob and as silly as possible when I had to.
I feel like a lot of the times, yes, there might be some kids that are not into that, but I feel like most of the kids
Yeah.
like that.
90 to 95%.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm thinking safety. I mean, I will do that in a crowded place for that kid's safety, if that means that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean like drawing major attention to yourself to redirect them?
I mean,
Is that what you mean?
being a real cartoon. I will be SpongeBob.
They got one.
Like Pastor Barry on steroids.
Okay. I mean, they might kind of be like, what in the world, and then walk away, so yeah.